From time immemorial, the sovereign nations have inhabited, protected, and preserved the land that is so-called Canada. We acknowledge this fact. The land we serve is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, and the Chippewa. Real World's offices are in Toronto, which is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel through Lens and Lights Practitioners in Discussion. My name is Sophia Abdigir. I'm the program director at Real World, and I'll be your moderator for this evening. Carrie Ann James was unfortunately unable to make it because of set life, and I know the people on this panel very much relate to that. But we do have excited conversation planned out for all of you. Just one note: make sure to put your questions in the chat, and we'll leave room at the end for a Q&A. So, as we're speaking and as you hear things that spike your interest, please put those questions throughout the panel. I'm so excited to have Roya Del Sol and Oyan Vassell with us today. Roya is a cinematographer and media artist of Caribbean heritage, currently living and working in Toronto, having both shot and directed short films, music videos, live performance series, and short documentaries. Her films have screened at film festivals such as Breakthrough Film Festival, Forum, Images Festival, Luminato, and more. Oyan is a visual storyteller and photographer who uses light as a narrative tool, shaping mood, emotion, and meaning within each frame. Through intentional lighting and contemptual imagery, he seeks to tell human stories that expose culture, identity, and connection, creating images designed to resonate and endure. Thank you both for being here. Lighting is often talked about as like a technical skill, but it's also cultural, relational, and deeply political, and especially when we're talking about Black skin tones and Black stories. But before we kind of get into the conversation about, how it is working on set, how it is working within your respective mediums, I would like you both to kind of talk about like how you came to your practices. So I'll start with you, Roya.
Yeah, actually, you know what, Oyan, I would love if you started.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So my journey started back in high school. I started off as I started off in photography primarily at that time, and from there, I enjoyed it, the experience, but I wanted more, so I ended up going into graphic design, and I did that for a time throughout college, um, which then led me to art direction. So I made that switch primarily from graphic design to art director in advertising, primarily because of the creative freedom that I felt that I would gain as an art director. At the time, like doing my own graphics, it was fun, it was great, but then you kind of run into the wall of, well, you're not actually doing your own like creative, you're doing creative for someone else, and I kind of wanted to have more creative freedom and control. And that was kind of what I wanted at the time, so I ended up in advertising. Um, my experience in advertising was very mixed. At the time, it was very, I would say, very difficult for me at that point. So I may have had the book, but I didn't necessarily have the look as art director. Um, so it was kind of a bit hard to kind of fit into that space. Um, and yeah, your experience really depends on like who you get partnered up with to mentor you. So the person that had actually saw my work and that actually believed in me, their mother died the day I was supposed to start. So I lost that mentor that I was hoping that would kind of like help me guide me through that process, and that didn't happen. So he had to leave the agency, and the agency at the time was going through synergy. They were combining two agencies. So that was a very interesting thing to see. Certain people getting promoted, some teams basically being told that they had it was like their last day, that sort of
Mhm.
thing. And then you have me here being like, oh, hopefully I can like hold on while this tornado is happening around me long enough to build a career. Um, Found out, through that process that although I had the graphic component, I was still lacking in certain areas and needed a little bit more development um artistically. And so uh I ended up leaving that agency and going to a different agency where I felt I had a little bit more opportunity.
Mhm.
And I was able to kind of get some mentorship at that point and develop more as an art director. However, that studio as well lost an account and my mentor was gone again.
Mm.
So, kind of speaks to like this, like the just nature of being in a creative art field, even if you are on the, I guess, the more profit earning side of things, your, your job is still very much, uh, how do I say it? It can be uprooted. Like your life could be pretty uprooted just like that.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So my mentor at that point left. I wanted more training. So I ended up going back to school at that point for photography.
Mhm.
Um, and actually, it was an experience that I had at that agency that actually uh guided that decision as well a little bit more. It was being uh brought to set as art director and seeing what the crews were doing that kind of sparked my interest in like
Mm.
what was going on here. It
Mm.
was specifically a H&R Block commercial. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it was like on a street corner and like in one section there was like the like b-boys that were like performing, and then the other section it had like almost like a Chinese New Year dragon team, and it was just like different spots, areas of the frame had different like uh performers or different things that were happening on the street, and then they kind of melded it together to make it one large commercial. And then basically took the individual spots and made those like assets for like social.
Mhm.
Um, Anyway, but like it was through that process that I was like, you know what, I like execution. Like I love doing the thinking part, the cerebral part of creating a
Mm.
concept
Mm.
and digging through and finding the references and doing like the cultural deep dive to
Mhm.
understand like, okay, if I do this, then it will communicate this to this
Mm.
segment. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Um, And but I also like being on set and being a part of the crew and being like, hey, how's it going? Okay, let's work together and make this happen.
Mhm.
So it was kind of my first experience doing that, and I did not get that as a photographer. So a
Mhm.
photographer, I'm more insular and more
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
heads down. But I had applied to Humber for film. I didn't get in that year, but I ended up going into photography, and I ended up taking it because it was going to give me this, I felt at the time, this a similar visual language,
Mhm.
which there is, and then later on I found out that there is a bit more to being on set in terms of film, um, than just the visual language part.
Mhm.
But I took the opportunity and I did the photography at Humber College for photography course, and I came out of that and I was in photography for I would say a couple years. Got to the point I was able to get my own studio and whatnot, and yeah, that was great. And then COVID happened. So COVID happened, and that completely shook everything up, and I ended up having to scrounge for work. And I was able to get on a couple sets as a PA at the time, and I was like, I'm kind of digging this because the days are just longer. Like as a photo assistant or photographer, usually you would work maybe. 3 days at a time. If not, like at max, that's like your best day. Um, but on a film crew, you could probably be there for a couple weeks. So I was just like, all right, cool. COVID's here. I kind of have to diversify what I'm doing. Took the opportunity and wound up on the art department team one day, and from there it kind of snowballed. And now I'm doing grip and lighting in the film union, and then I'm shooting outside on my own. So I do still, but I also now do video and that's so that's my journey. I think a lot of going that way kind of helped to inform a lot of the decisions I do make now, because I do, like, if I am, depending on the job I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, well, what is it that you need? Right. And, the art director will talk to me, or the client will talk to me, and I'm like, okay, I understand you because I was the AD at one point. So I totally understand what you need. Right. And I can adjust accordingly, or client, I'm able to consult them and be like, no, this is kind of what is standard. You know what I mean? And this is how it will work for you. So like a lot of those other experiences that I had to get to this point inform the creative that I do now.
Yeah, and
As
yeah,
oh,
like
sorry.
no, it's all good. But I think like we'll talk about this like in
Okay, sorry. I was just
no, but
coming in there.
it does like highlight how, being in a field where like there's not a straight path, there's not like a script for anybody. People are weaving around, and especially
Exactly.
in a field where a lot of people have multiple hats, they're bringing different tools together, and it's very much part of the collaboration process. Roya, can you talk about how you came to being a cinematographer and your path towards this practice?
Yeah, for sure. Like Oyen, I also am based in stills and actually still work as a stills photographer in addition to kind of the cinematography DP work that I do. I guess also like Oyen, you talked about kind of like, in high school, just briefly engaging. I feel like I did a photography course. I was like, okay, fun, whatever. I actually didn't latch onto it then, like at all. But then I had also done like a media arts course, and that was my first time engaging with any sort of like time-based media. And I locked into editing. I loved editing. And it was like the first time I ever experienced flow state. And I was like, oh, this is so interesting. This is so cool. And then I told my parents, I'm like, oh my God, I want to go to school for film. And I have Caribbean parents, and they were like, film? They were like, film? Nobody works in film. No people get jobs in it. And I was 17, impressionable. And I was like, whatever. Went to school for life sciences. Did all this stuff, did psychology, thought I was going to be a psychiatrist, worked jobs, realized doing risk assessment and caring for people in that way is very cool, but I could not make a life out of it. Joined a creative collective, met all these, which is always an interesting experience, met all these artists and things like that. But at the time when I was kind of vibing the creative collective, I wasn't even really making. But I think being around a lot of people who were making, that's when I kind of started to actually delve into photography. I actually technically I got fired from my 9 to 5, and then I was still living with my parents at the time, and I had a savings account, and it was about to hit summer, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna fuck around and take photos for like a bit, and not even as like a gift to me and a hobby to me, because I was also very burnt out and sad at the time for a lot of reasons. And I just started posting them on Instagram, and then people were like DMing me like, oh hey, can you take photos of me? And they were like, for money. And I was like, for money? Like I was like, you can totally pay me to shoot you. So then I started doing that, and that was kind of like me moving into, I want to say it was like 2017. That was the year that I started shooting stills. And then later that year, I got a job working at a gallery. So that was like my part-time job, but it was great because it fed into the photo stuff. Because my bosses to this day, I rate them so hard. They really like designed that position to be something that was accessible to someone who's trying to like build an arts practice, like in terms of the amount of hours versus the amount of pay. And they were so flexible. And if I got like cool gigs, they'd be like, yeah, take it. Like we'll hire, because they're like, it's a gallery. Like it's important, but like we're going to be fine if like you have to go off for a day. But it was also good because it helped me build my network, and I met a lot of artists and things like that. And so then when COVID hit, because COVID hitting was also a shift for me, again, as COVID had hit, I was still mostly doing photography. I had like attended like one Black woman film cinematography course, but at the time I remember they did that course multiple times, and I attended it multiple times. And the first time they did it, it was just like they showed us a camera and then they talked about it. And then I hit up the person who did it. I was like, oh, do you think next time we can touch it? And then the next time we could touch it, and then whatever. So then, but basically in COVID, when COVID hit 2020, I was still doing photography. And when everything shut down, a lot of the performing artists I met through the gallery, like there were people who were also like dancers and things. And they were like, oh, well, now I can't do my dance show. Like, can you film it for me? And I do feel like among like Gen Pop, like people who don't necessarily like practice like photo and stills, sometimes people tend to like, oh, you do photography. I don't know. And I feel like, I don't know if you ever experienced that. People like, oh, you can do photography. Like you can film this as well. And they're like transferable, but they're not. But then I was like, you know what? I actually do want to learn video. So I'm not even going to mention that. So I just started taking on those video gigs. And then at the top of 2021, Black Women Film had done another version of the cinematography course. And that was honestly like actually changed honestly everything for me. It was like the one they did in collaboration with Hire. And there was a bunch of DPs, like some folks who were like really established, like Bobby Shore was a part of it, Jordan Oram, all these people. And I think because also like things were still shut down from film, a lot of people who like would have been out working, they were like chilling in Toronto. And so I got to take part in that course. And that was when I like learned to understand, oh, like what is a grip? What is a gaffer? What are all these roles? How do they work together? Like, yeah. And that helped me just understand what film was. And then from there, that really like catalyzed me to just want to continue working in film, doing cinematography, building up my reel, blah, 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 whatever. But like, I think I also feel very strongly about like community arts programs and like even spaces, you know, like programming, like what Real World is doing and all of that, because that was 100% my entryway to this. I like did not study any sort of arts like at all. I studied life sciences in school, which was very cool. But I just like, I am definitely like, I would say self-taught until community taught me more, but I haven't done like formal schooling. It's a lot of like patching together workshops and learning on set and whatever. So it's kind of how like I arrived at everything. I still feel, again, like I feel like there's so much to learn. And Ori and I were just talking about this before it started, but you know, we're very much on the journey. There is so much to learn. So yeah, I guess that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, you know, I hear from a lot of people who went to film school being like, I learned a lot, but like, you know, are also maybe having insecurities around like, but not a lot of practical skills. And it's this kind of thing of, regardless of where you're coming from, like the journey really informs the work. And it's also one of the more difficult things because it's like compared to other practices, there's a lot of work you can do on your own, but you only can get better at being a cinematographer by actually shooting projects, and they cost so much money. And so that's this interesting constraint that you have to deal with. Yeah. And even if you have budgets that are, you know, big, you're still constrained with the time that you have. And so
there's always constraints.
Exactly.
Yeah, but yeah. So my perspective on it is that the constraints kind of are like that box that you have to work in, right? And it kind of creates that fingerprint, you know, for the film. In the restrictions that it kind of creates, right? So if it says like, okay, you got a smaller budget, so now you have to think, you know, from like a DP angle or from a lighting angle, you have to think creatively about it. So maybe it's going to be like, all right, so we don't have lights, but what we could do is that, you know, we're going to use all window lighting for our scene, right? And just make a point to just use window lighting and bounces, right? And you could still pull that off. You could still pull that off on a shoestring budget. Absolutely. You can still pull that off.
Yeah.
But you just need to bring that more creative problem solving part of you forward and to kind of get there. And a lot of and that's like the biggest part of film is it's problem solving and it's trial and error.
Mm,
right? So there are days where we might go out on a larger budget
mhm,
production, and
mhm.
it's just to like test something. You
Yeah.
know, we get paid like half day rate or something like that, or
Mhm,
sometimes we get lucky and get the full day rate.
mm,
But you go out and you test it to see if it will work on the day of, and anything, and what you get out of that test, you bring it to the day of,
yeah.
right? So then you are prepared.
Yeah.
And then if things still go awry, then you still, because you've done the test, you've also come up with plans A, B, C, D, just in case. And it just pays to be prepared. So, trial and error, um, but you've planned for failure essentially,
Mhm,
and what those contingencies are, and you've already kind of worked that out with your team.
mhm,
And when I say team, I'm saying including like the DP as well, director, because everyone kind of has to be on board just in case. There's certain things that I would hold in my pocket and just kind of wait to like pull that card if
mm.
need be. But I do think that those constraints help to create that thumbnail, not thumbnail, but the that fingerprint for the
Yeah.
film,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, no, I think constraints are definitely creatively helpful. I think it just pushes you to also learn more. You know what I mean? Like even what you were saying about like the natural light and a bounce and whatever. I'm like, if you actually, the thing about it is like, it's true, like money and gear is so helpful. It buys you, I think, like space to make mistakes and convenience. That's what I would say money buys you. So the things that
Yeah.
Oyen was saying about like being like thinking ahead and being well prepared and whatever, like I think enough prep and creativity can take you like a lot of places. Like you can dead ass shoot a film like on your iPhone with window light and like with a bounce car, it's like foam core from Dollarama for like $1. You know what I mean? Like you could really go in and some work lights from Home Depot and just like do it. You know
No,
what I
no,
mean?
it's
Um,
facts.
and lots of people do. Do you know what I mean? Lots of people do, and that's like how they build their reel and things like that. But yeah, I also think constraints. It's like it helps you with like clarity of vision because I sometimes feel like it's like wanting to do everything. Sometimes you want to do everything, but then just like locking in on the very specific thing you are trying to accomplish. Like I think both in terms of like resources of like your mental capacity and then also like if there's financial capacity, whatever, like I think just always understanding what you're trying to accomplish and bringing every decision back to that kind of one thing, I think is like what makes work strong. So again, like I do actually think constraints like Oyen said can be very, very helpful. And it's just like a thing you were always going to come up against. So like the more you develop the skill, both to also not be, because I think there is a thing where when you're talking about like preparing and being prepared for the unexpected. I also think one thing I think about a lot for me is on set the emotional regulation of coming up against constraints, right? Because something always goes wrong. So then when something does go wrong, how do you hold that
Yeah.
emotionally? How do you allow yourself to think clearly and how you develop that muscle to kind of like once you come up against a constraint, um, again, problem solve, game plan. And obviously it's like doing the preparation that's like I think particularly if you like depending on how you deal with anxiety, that can also like help you feel centered. But it's also kind of like I also think it's like the more you do a thing, like for me, again, I'm very emergent as a DP. I'm still learning, but I think like with every project, like the more that I learn that I've been able to like overcome a barrier, the more it gives you confidence that you can like figure it out again. And the problem's always different. So you kind of have to enjoy, you kind of have to enjoy that part of like a new problem because I feel like new problems will continue to occur. But anyways, I feel like I'm talking in circles, so I'm gonna stop there.
No, no, no. You
Yeah.
touched on a key thing. Like emotional regulation is king on set.
Mhm,
A lot of people discount it.
mhm,
It is king. It goes so far. So like if you're new, just being able to just like keep calm and carry on and just be like, oh, we have to do this? No problem. I got it.
mhm,
That goes a long way. And
mhm,
if you're further along in your career, just being able to come up against problems, whether that be gear not arriving on time, or maybe there was a problem between the poor communication between maybe your best and the production house,
Mhm.
or gear house, or something usually goes wrong
Mhm.
at some point,
Mhm.
and it's gonna peeve you, it's gonna piss you off, get
Mhm.
really upset, and
Mhm.
then it's like, how do you hold that energy
Mhm.
and still effectively communicate?
Mhm.
Now, like, I've seen the gamut. I've seen the gamut, and it doesn't matter whether or not you're on a low budget
Mhm.
set, or mid tier, or on the highest production.
Mhm.
Someone's gonna have a bad day.
Mhm.
Someone's gonna have a bad day,
Mhm.
and it may get deflected toward you, and it's just like, wait, I have nothing to do with anything else.
Mhm.
Don't take it personal,
Mhm.
and just understand that it really does have nothing to do. It
Mhm.
it really doesn't. You're just like in the line of sight for the most part. But like, and just kind of controlling yourself. And if it is you that's having the bad day, just yeah, know yourself.
Mhm.
Know yourself,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
take it somewhere else, and then come back, because it'll either hurt or hinder your career.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How you
Yeah,
handle it.
yeah.
100. Yeah.
And I think you both kind of touched about this, like how important prep is. Can you talk about your processes? Like how do you prep? What does collaboration look like between like you and the gaffer and the wider team? And how does stuff like, uh, light diagrams or reference translate into like a shared understanding? Like how much of the work is just making sure people are on the same page?
So much of the
all
work.
all of it.
So much of
That's a whole thing. It's a whole
Yeah.
thing.
I feel like
Um,
oh sorry.
no, 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 no. You
Yeah.
go.
I think honestly, like I some stages of prep give me so much anxiety. Some stages of prep I love. I do really love, the first moment you're like reading the script with the director, you're having all these meetings, you're talking about how are you visualizing this, what are your references, blah, 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 whatever. For me, that's like some of the best stuff. I feel like really ideating and just dreaming very big, I think is very fun. Then you have to get to the place where it's like logistical and you're pulling it back in and you're like, okay, so how are we actually executing each one of these moments? I think a very key part, like early in prep, is like actually like bringing on your team, hiring your team, understanding the needs of the job, understanding like in terms of the people you're bringing on, not only their skill sets, like what do they do well, especially if it's something that's like lower budget, under resourced, like this person might not have a second, like you might only have to have a first. What does that mean? And are they a person who even like on a labor level, are they okay with holding both roles? You know what I mean? Like I think you have to know people and their dispositions really well, I think, as well as their skill sets. And then also, even when I'm building teams, I'm also thinking about like, okay, all these people's personalities and how are they going to work well together? That is something that I think about just from like a perspective. So I think like that's a like really early in prep for me. And then I think once you're actually getting to shooting, it's obviously like again like doing location scouts, putting together your equipment list, speaking with your team kind of about that, creating your lighting diagrams, kind of in the space. And I would love to talk to you, or I'd love for you to talk more like as a gaffer about kind of like specific when you're going on tech scouts, like what are the kind of specific like technical needs and things you're looking out for. I think that's also like really important. I'm just doing like higher level.
Oh, okay.
But so
Yeah,
yeah,
we can
like
speak to
I
that.
feel yeah, so then I feel like particularly Safi, you talked about lighting diagrams, right? That was the thing you had mentioned.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and again, I do feel like things change, but I think it's just like even being able to have that, and I think being able to very clearly communicate with everyone, like so everyone could very specifically visualize. I also think it's in those moments also, even when I'm like presenting a lighting diagram to look like key grip, gaffer, like we're talking about everything. And then also that's a time for people to be like, oh, okay, well, what if this problem occurs? Like for me, I very much feel it's like very collaborative and we're all kind of like looking at this and like anticipating needs and anticipating things that could happen. And also even with like lighting fixtures, like what's going to allow us like, because again, there's also budget restraint, what's going to allow us the most flexibility and we can use in different places. And when do we need to have, based on what order we're shooting, what lights do we have available and how do we make sure we have enough of them? Like what has to be like moved somewhere else? So it's just like asking all these questions and kind of like thinking through all of it together. And again, there's also like lens testing, and kind of like looking at the characteristics of lenses and showing that to the director and seeing like how they feel about it. Is it evoking the emotion you want? Are you getting the kind of like, do you want a specific kind of flair or stylistic feeling or whatever? That's also really fun because, again, I'm still like really new. So like even when I, like the times I've gotten to go to Panavision and just like check out a bunch of lenses, I'm like very much giving kid in a candy shop. So yeah, so I feel like those are things that are like fun and exciting about prep. But yeah, like so much of it is in prep because like even I think like comparing like stills, for example, to cinematography, I think there's a lot of flexibility in stills in specific ways. I think even in terms of like, for example, trying to achieve specific lighting or feeling. I just feel like, for example, like in cinematography, like it's like if you want to do a specific rig or move the camera a specific way, you need very specific pieces of gear. And you can jimmy rig something or, go on shitty rigs and they'll show you all the things that people did to make something work. But there is a lot of specificity and you do really have to think through things and be prepared because like not having like one specific thing can really throw off like everything that you're trying to accomplish. The gear house is how far away. To get it might be 2 hours. And it's just like, so that like prep is so important, I find in cinematography in a way that I feel like I've honestly found a lot more flexibility around on stills. It's like, also but anyways, I'm gonna stop talking. I feel like Oyan, I would love for you.
I would just say you live and die in prep, just like how you would like live and die before that. So the more you plan, the more you prepare, the more eventualities that you kind of like come up with within your mind and you take care of there. Before getting to set, the smoother the day runs, the better off you're going to be, right? So for prep, going through the script, getting the ideas, that's the fun part, talking about pulling references, talking about how you guys kind of see things kind of playing out. It's not until it's like, okay, let's talk gear and like, what is it gonna take to take that vision we had and make that real? Okay, now you got gear and numbers involved. It gets real at that point, and then it's like, okay, maybe we can't do that. Maybe how do we rework that original thought or idea or scene and make it real for how we want it, or come up with a creative way to execute what we want. Because now we're playing with budgets, we're playing with manpower, and that's another thing that people don't necessarily consider is how much manpower is it going to take for me to or achieve this, or person power, I would say, right? So so you come up with the scene, you've got the gear, but you don't have the people, you don't have bodies. Now you're behind schedule. Now you don't have time for those shots. Now director's dropping shots. Now, you need another day in that location or something like that. And the budget just goes out the window. Right. So so that's something that I've kind of situation I've run into is being given, this is what it is, this is what we want, and it's just like, okay, well, I don't have the team for that, right? Or worse off is that they provide you the team, and then it's just like, okay, none of you guys know what a C-stand is, how to use one, on a smaller production, and it's just like, okay, all right, so today is gonna be it's gonna be like a minefield because like nothing is gonna get done on time, right? Because that was one situation I had run into where the ask it wasn't complicated. It was just that I didn't have anyone there that I could say I trusted to get my ass done on time, like ASAP, so I could see in the monitor what was going on, so I could talk it out with the DP and we could be on one page. So, so now I'm away from the monitor and now it's just like, okay, DP's, is it set? Okay, now I have to like run over to the next one and I'm asking Buddy to help me out, but he's not at the level where he can help me out, and I
Mhm,
needed someone that had a little bit more experience that
mhm,
would have, at least been able to help me out for that day, right? So manpower is something to always consider during prep.
mhm,
The asks is always something to consider during prep.
mhm,
Budget, look and feel is always important, but then you have to consider budget and manpower and all of that. All the other things kind of come into play.
mhm,
As grip supports other departments. In
mhm,
prep,
mhm,
I want to know what art needs. Because
mm,
if art
mhm,
comes and go, oh well, can we use a couple stand? I need the stands. I had
mhm,
already planned for X amount of stands, and I got some contingency because I figured maybe someone might ask, but I wasn't expecting to give out like half the stash. You know what I'm saying? Or something of that, like Apple boxes. So it's also good as a key grip or best boy grip is to well, the best boy should coordinate with the other departments to figure out what else they need so that they don't dig into the grip stash and take away what the grip needs to get their job done, right? So um just checking in on all the departments and figuring out what they need. And that's the collaborative element, is just checking
mhm,
in with everybody and being like, how can I help you achieve your best,
mhm,
and going through each department and
mhm,
supporting each other that way.
mhm,
That way we can get jobs done better, more effective, and we're just we're out of there as early as possible.
mhm,
Um, so like that's the prep side of things. And yeah, I also would like to know what I'm walking into.
mhm,
So if we're walking into like an old construction house or like a new building,
mhm,
um, you know, gaffer brain is like how much power is coming into the unit, if we're in that unit, or how much power can I pull?
mhm,
Where is the the electrical box?
mhm,
You know what I
mhm,
mean? So
mhm.
just
Very.
understanding what I'm walking into as a technician,
Mhm,
what can I do? Because
mhm,
there are some buildings where they're like, yeah, you can't put any holes in the walls, you can't put any connections here or that. You're gonna
mhm,
Okay, cool. We're in someone's home and I can't damage anything. So then how can I achieve the ask
mhm.
um, you know,
Mhm.
neatly?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you want to hide a light here, but it's just like I can't drill into the wall and secure it.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
what am I gonna have to come up with
Yeah.
that can rig up in that area and still be not visible on camera, but will achieve that ask, right?
Mhm,
So knowing what you're walking into
mhm,
and being prepared for it, and that's what comes back to being prepared,
mhm,
is king as a technician. You gotta
mhm,
always know what you're walking into. You
mhm.
don't want to walk into some mess and then it's just like, oh buddy, you can't do none of what you had planned. Your
Yeah.
diagram is garbage. Like
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
use it no more because this rule, that rule, and if
Mhm.
you break any of the rules, you guys are gonna get kicked out or chewed out.
Yeah,
You know,
that's the producer's
so
problem. So
So
and that's
knowing what you can get away with as
yeah.
well is also important.
Yeah.
And then factoring time.
Mm,
Uh, I didn't realize how long it would take to get people out of a space so you could even like go in
mm,
and do some work, right? So
mhm,
when they say like text have the floor, all right, cool,
mhm,
get
mhm.
out.
Yeah.
Well, it takes like what?
Yeah.
You're not even factoring the fact that it's gonna take
Yeah.
a couple minutes to clear people out so you could
I think
go
so,
up
like, a great first
and
AD is, like, so key.
it's like set up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so like they're asking how long is it gonna take? It's like, okay, it's gonna take X amount of time, but that's too long. Well, it's gonna take like 2 minutes for people to clear out, then for me to come in with the gear and get set up,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
and then for people to get back in, it's gonna be another 2 minutes, right? So
Yeah.
these are
Yeah.
things you got to think about.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's the communication is dependent on the information that you have, it's dependent on the skill sets of the people around you. And it's
100%.
that thing of like each project informs the next one, right? And everyone's doing that as well at the same time, let alone when you factor in like egos and all those other things that like, impact your ability to do the work. When we often talk about how like historical Black skin has been poorly lit in film and fashion, we always know like the history, right? Like the camera was invented without Black people in mind. And so much of the catch up is like making work on a tool that didn't have us in mind, but Black people are creative and Black people will figure out freedom and Black people will do the thing that they need to do. And so as image makers, as people who are working with light, like how much of the struggle do you think is just like the technical component, or is it cultural, or is it even both?
It's all of it, you know what I mean? It's from my perspective anyway. When I got into photography, I didn't know, as I was learning that if I had like a black and white person in a shot, that I'd have to consider proper lighting for both of them. I was just like, what? I just light it and I shoot it. No, it's like, okay, later on, I'm like, oh no, I like black skin wants a little bit more light to pop, just to glow up, if I glow up black skin, now the white person's all blown out. They got nothing left, right? Depending on how pale they are, right? So, if you got someone with porcelain skin, the minute you get a touch of light is enough. You know what I mean? And if you have a porcelain skin against like very dark skin, now you're shooting a problem. Not so much now, because then you can take it into like Photoshop and you can correct their exposures or after the fact. Or, if you have more time, you could do it on set. But that was something I didn't know, right? So, and I wasn't necessarily taught that out the gate. I think it was something that was told to me in class, but it was kind of like one-liner kind of a situation. It was more so what was being in part was proper exposure for skin
And that's
tone.
the cultural.
But it wasn't elaborated on. So I was like, okay, if this looks good for everybody. So I'm like, okay, generalizing at this point, but it's not quite how it works. So then, so that's the system, and then there's other factors in there when you consider like editing software and presets and stuff like that. That's more baked in on the back end, right? Because they have the software creators are going off of like their baseline, right? So we're not necessarily always considered in that baseline, and then we have to go through, we have to adjust presets in order to make those corrections, right? So that's been my experience. I think films have gotten better now, but they're still lacking in elements in other areas like hair. I didn't realize how um I always thought it was just like, hey, you just need to get better at doing hair, but I didn't realize it was only like predominantly white hairdressers working on black hair until I got to the more professional side of things. I was like, oh wow, okay, so there are no like black barbers working on black hair on set.
But there's a
And
million black barbers.
yeah,
There's a
and I
million
didn't know about
Yeah.
the internal politics of why that is. You know what I mean? So like if black hairstylists will come in and they're capable of doing both white and black hair versus having established industry hairstylists that can only do predominantly white hair or straight hair, and now having to go up against someone that is like more capable but less established versus someone that's established and has the connections already. Now you have like a back and forth, right? And you know, in my mind, it's just, hey man, standardize the training or whatnot, but it doesn't always play out like that on the back end, on the politics end. Um,
Yeah, but
so I know that they're having that fight right now,
yeah,
black hairstylists with the unions. I
and
don't know where they are, but
like the work has to be done definitely, and there are some unions doing some programs and getting ways to get people who have the experience, but it's not recognized, and that's usually like half the issue.
Yeah.
But Roya, could you speak about some of your projects, because you've had the experience of, like, having sets that are predominantly like black or brown sets, and sometimes even shooting very culturally specific stuff or things that are like a bit more sensitive,
Mhm.
just because of like what the performer is doing.
Yeah.
I think about is your project In My Bones, and how
Yeah.
that requires, delicacy on you via
Mhm.
the lens, but also the kind of environment that you're setting up.
For sure. Yeah, if anything, I feel like most of my opportunities have been through like black and brown sets, because those are the people who, again, like we're talking about, who's willing to take a chance on who. Those have been the spaces that people have been willing to take a chance on me. I think actually from just like even like going back to what Wayne was saying about like a technical perspective of like, for example, I think there's like the cultural specificity of like making sure that Black folks know that they are seen as competent and important and cared for on set, and that they can express their needs and whatever. That's all really important. From talent to technical crew, like for example, in My Bones, it was like a dancer who is like, she's dancing half nude. It is really like just her moving in the space and us lighting her to make it as emotionally evocative as possible. And it was very important to make her feel safe, right? That's the thing. But I also think from even like a technical perspective, like looking at Black skin and lighting Black skin, like we're talking about exposure levels, like even it's like, where are we placing someone who is white in relation and Black in relation to the light? But there's also even like, for example, like the type of the source and the hardness of the source, like as well. And like even, for example, like a very hard light source, like thinking about the fall off and thinking about like how aggressive the highlight is going to be versus like the other areas of the skin. Like, and that actually was something I learned through photography, was like seeing how much more like Black skin handled like really soft diffuse light and reflectivity very well, as opposed to just like very hard light. So that was something that I really learned. And also I remember actually this like changed things for me, is that Bradford Young, I think it was Bradford Young, he did like a talk where he was talking about like Insecure, because everyone, the whole thing was that when Insecure came out, everyone was like, whoa, Black people look so fab on the screen and whatever, and how are they doing that? And he was talking about both like actually like working with makeup artists to also increase like reflectivity on skin. So it's like, oh, are we like oiling it up and glossing it up a little bit, particularly in like low light scenes where it's like you're working with like a little bit of that to really like reflect off the skin, keep it really juicy, not blow out parts of the face, but still have it like really like nicely evenly lit, you know what I mean? So and again, that's thinking about collaborating with other departments, like we talked about, like working with hair and glam, or you're talking about even earlier, just on a technical level, working with art, what are your needs? But I think, again, speaking to the collaboration of film and what's on the screen and what you're seeing, that's why everyone's work is so important. Even again with production design, the lights, where are they coming from, the type of light again. So I'm going around in circles, but just from a technical perspective, I think that's a thing in terms of like looking at Black skin and exposing that. And then with the dance film we did with Jazz, that was something that we tried to like keep in mind. And because it's a dance film also, there's a bit more room for stylization. She can like, she can be a little glossier and whatever, but trying to both like balance like the kind of creative needs of, or the narrative needs, especially if you're doing something narrative, while also trying to figure out how to create those little technical hacks and bring it in there, I think is like a collaborative process with the director, blah, blah, whatever. Anyways, I'm done.
No, that was good. I just double checked, and we are also like live on Instagram. So there's actually 2 questions from Instagram. The first one, you've both been speaking about it, but it's, how do you approach lighting actors with darker skin when they're on camera next to someone with much lighter skin, so that they both are lit appropriately?
So yeah, you could do that with like nets, right? So when you go and get like a flag kit, you're gonna get like your green, your red, and like your purple net. You could do a lot with just like your standard green net, or yellow. You're basically looking for like a one-stop difference or so, and it's usually not always that big, but like, yeah, you just take your net, you net that area out, on wherever your light's coming from, wherever side needs to be adjusted, and then you adjust that way. So you talk with your grips and get your grips to work with your lighting team to set that up. So your lamp up would get the lamp up, set, focused, and then you got your grips coming, and then the grips modify the light, right? So light lamp techs, Sparkies, they set and focus, and then your grip comes and cuts and shapes, right?
Mhm.
So get your grip to adjust that ratio for you um, on set live, right? So
Mhm.
and it works the same way if you're doing photography too. So that's kind of funny how like my my experience as a grip now affects how I shoot when I do my own photography. Because
Mhm.
even though I still use strobes when I
Mhm.
do photography, and that's just how I was taught. I wasn't really using continuous lighting at the time. But yeah, man, you put a little net, but you cut that down.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then you have a workable ratio for when they take it into uh, DaVinci Resolve. They're grading on
Mhm.
it.
What about you, Roya?
I think that I've already spoken to some of the technical stuff, and Oyen's really added on to that. So I would love to know the other question. Yeah.
Perfect. How can filmmakers use camera and light to make shooting in a conventionally uninteresting location look interesting and dynamic?
I mean, I
Right.
actually think, I don't know if you want to go. I think there's lots of ways.
No, you start.
I think there's lots of ways to do that. It's like, it's so interesting. Like, what is a conventionally uninteresting location? Honestly,
That's fair.
I'm not even going to I think that this person, I'm just gonna give them something to listen to. If they've watched Severance, they should listen to the podcast, the cinematography podcast with Jessica Lee Gagne. I believe I'm saying her name wrong, but she's a cinematographer on Severance, and she talks about the ways that they really try to work with also like an environment that stays the same, and also in a lot of ways like an office environment is deeply unappealing in the ways that they work with lighting that. So you're really interesting. I think that's a really interesting thing that if this person has a curiosity about that, they should go and try and listen to that. But also I think like in terms of like your specific kind of project that you're working on, like it's like I think it's about the thing about it, right? This is what I always say to people is like a camera is not and will never be reality. Every lens that you use, it is showing a different aspect of what you're seeing, but there's no camera that is going to see what your eye is seeing. But I also think that what that is it's actually a really strong creative tool. And so it's like what lens or what lighting is helping you hone into the aspects of this location that you have that you do like and emphasize them, even in terms of like framing. Are you like shooting really long? So for example, things feel like even it's like a kind of boring brutalist place, now the lines feel really aligned and really sharp, and you're like leaning into the architecture of it. You know what I mean? Like I have this thing where like this is actually when I started photography, like I was like really obsessed with the idea that anywhere I stand, I could find a good photo if I like thought about it in an interesting way, whether it's going really wide or really macro or honing in on something. And that was a challenge that I all gave myself. And I do think that like to me, like a flex of skill and competency is like really being able to work with the thing that is most mundane and making it feel magical. I literally feel like that is what makes a good image maker, in my opinion. That's one of like the really strong. So I guess I didn't really.
No,
I
no, no,
would
no.
like to add on to that. I feel like that was
I'm gonna add on. So
like top level.
100%. So
Yeah.
like, okay, so in photography, the way that I was taught and you were taught was to how do we take the mundane and elevate it? It's the
Mhm.
same thing that like it's like our directors kind of have to think the same way as well for commercials is how do I sell like a paperclip to you, so like what an AD would have to think, right? And a photographer is like, how do I make a paperclip like fucking beautiful, you know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
And the cinematographer is like, how can I make a paperclip beautiful but for multiple frames, right?
Mhm.
So let's go and look at your mundane, right? So you've got your camera. So what Ray was saying is that you're gonna have to go and pick a focal length, right? So pick a focal length that will kind of, do you want to see the full room or do you want to see part of the room? Right? And then you have to adjust your angle. So once you found like an angle and focal length that will give you like a interesting kind of space. So maybe you're not looking at like straight on flat wall. Maybe you're coming on an angle and the focal length gives you like a bit of like the doorway here, and then you go and you see the room. behind it, right? So like,
Adding depth.
you're a little off to the side, you know what I mean? So now you're playing with the angle and you're playing with the focal length,
Mhm.
right? And depending on your lens choice now, like for example, what lens? The Nisi Athenas, for example, like budget like cinema lens, right? They're gonna should be, I believe they're sharp up to a certain distance. So like, okay, your minimum distance is like maybe like 5 centimeters, and that will make that's exactly how far you are off the door jamb, for example. Now you have your door jamb is like in focus, and you can like wrap to your subject that's in the room. You know what I mean? And now you have something that's locked off, but because you're racking focus in the room, you've kind of created that depth of feel, and you're taking the viewer's eye from like the door jam into the room,
Mhm.
right? And or like now let's from a lighting perspective now, what light do you have in the room? Is it like supposed to be more darker, drab? It's like creepy, scary, what have you? You're probably gonna want to do just one bulb in the ceiling. Right, so now I like imagine like a room, you're looking down a hallway and it's got just that one bulb, and you're just like, you're tracking forward into this like one bulb, and then you have it flicker or something like that. It's a boring ass room, but because you only have that one light source, and
Mhm.
you've basically darkened the rest of the space, it draws your eye to that light source that down the hall. So
Yeah.
you have to look down this dark hallway, hit this door jam, and then it takes you into the room where there is light.
Mhm.
And it's like, what do you see? You know what I mean? So you know, it, there isn't. I like to say there is no bad space,
Mhm.
because you can pick your angle, you can play with the light, you can set dressing is king.
Yeah.
I think set dressing is underutilized uh in like more low budget productions sometimes, just because they don't have the budget for it. But um yeah, set dressing is king, because then it
Mm.
puts like interesting elements in that space. You know what I
Mm.
mean? So now it's not a drab room. It's a closet. You know what I mean? It's got stuff in it or
Yeah.
something like that. You know what I'm saying? So you can dress it up and take it from being a more drab area to something that's more appealing. Or, you do a little bit of all of it, right? And you create that scene. So you start off with that drab room, and then you light it and you dress it, and then you pick your angle, and then the
Yeah.
races. Right. So it's never drab. It's what creatively are you gonna do to elevate it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
That's the constraint. The constraint is that you got a boring room.
yeah, I
Okay.
think I was gonna
What are
be
you
like,
gonna do with it?
yeah, I think to loop back to what we were saying at the beginning, because we were talking about constraints, and I think like again coming back to this idea of like knowing exactly what you're trying to do, and then making every creative decision around it to emphasize that feeling, I think is like what's gonna help you figure out how do I make this like special and interesting. But yeah, I'm done.
Well, yeah, man. That's my take on it.
yeah,
Sorry.
but it's what both of you are saying. It's that like you have these tools at your disposal, but it's about your perspective, and that is about
Yeah,
you as a creative, and that's you as an artist. Is your
yeah.
eye?
It forces you to be more creative. It's an exercise that even I find myself having to do. Is like, so I can pick like a corner of the house and then be like, okay, how would I like this
Mm,
for film?
mhm,
Right? And what do I got on hand? I don't have a ton of lights here. I can't
mhm,
like a ton of light.
mhm,
But I have a couple lights I can play with. I can bounce. Let's go. Let's mock it up
mhm,
and see how it can play out. And that's kind of the thing is that like if you're I'm still very much on my journey, and a lot of it is still having to do those things where I am
mhm,
reacquainting myself with lighting and stuff. And it's kind of hard when you are spending your time on set. So you're doing like a 12 hours, a 14-hour day. And then it's like, what time do you have left for your own creative work when you are actively working in a creative field? And I think that is the hardest thing to kind of figure out and plan out. When I was photo assisting, it was almost and doing like a full week of work at a production house. There was really no time for me to like go home and be like, okay, now it's time for me to set something up, and get creative, and because you're drained, you're tired.
Yeah, you have to
You,
find the time for your practice.
you've got to find time for your projects, and you also have to shore yourself up. So one big thing I wanted to kind of say is that it's okay to stop. It's not okay to quit. It's okay to stop. So
Okay.
what I mean by stopping is, okay, as a creative, what is it that you need to be at your utmost? And sometimes if that is to talk money talks and you need to go and sort that out,
Yeah.
stop, sort it out,
Yeah.
come back, because it will affect the work that you produce. It'll affect the amount of work you produce. It'll affect the quality of work you produce. So stop, sort it out, and come back. If you're working a lot and you don't feel like you have time, find the time.
Yeah.
You are a creative, and as a creative, you feel the need to create, and will make you miserable when you're not. And it might manifest itself in a whole bunch of different ways that are just negative. So, do the work, stack the cash, take a week off, do something for you. If it's
Can
on
I
the flip
add like
side,
15 seconds onto this?
yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was going to say, Roya, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the taking time to stop, Oyen, I think is really important. Also, even the taking time to stop and to yourself, to stop for a second, this is not working, evaluate it, and being okay to just do that, I think is the first thing. But also, like, one of my friends is like a very prolific artist. They don't work in film. They're like they do sculpture, and they're a musician, blah, 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 whatever. But I remember one time I was talking to them about like the work and how they put out so much work and whatever, but then they were like, I really view creation as like a multiple step process for them. They were talking, and I think it's applicable to everything. We were talking about this idea of like we always think about making as the production side of it, the production cycle, right? But there's also the rest side of it. After you come out of a really tough project, this is what I've also learned for myself. I need to make sure especially when I'm DPing, I just need to give myself a little break where I just like am resting my body. And so the rest is also important in actually what you're able to create, right? If you're not resting your body enough, you don't have the fuel to actually make at all. So that part is important. That part of stopping is important. And also like research is also important, so it's like a production, rest, research cycle. And sometimes research can be actually like, I'm looking into lights, I'm trying new techniques, but it can also be like, what are the curiosities within myself? What am I feeling drawn to? What are kind of like films that I want to watch, blah, blah, all of that. That was way more than 30 seconds. But all this to say that it's just like, I think also like the things that we also even conceive of as stopping are also like, it's actually like a full part of, and this is a cycle that you move through again and again. And I think a lot of people punish themselves when they're not in production cycle, but that's actually not how it works.
Sorry, finish.
No, I think it's just like points to the fact that like this conversation could go forever, but we do have to end. But it is so much of the work is like insular, and so much of the work is behind the scenes that like we don't often get to speak to cinematographers and their process. And so I want to thank you both for spending your time and sharing your wisdom and your journey, and all the beautiful nuggets that you both gave, because I think you really covered it all in terms of people and the craft and taking care of yourself as a person. So again, thank you so much for being here and for being part of this conversation.
Thank you so much for having us. And
Thank you for having me.
Chat with you in this way. So yeah,
it was great talking and seeing you again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Safia. for everything.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you, Real World.